this message.
Assalamu alaikum, family. It's your brother Landon X, NationTown TV, with a very quick and an important message that I just had to get off of my heart. It's actually something that I was not going to do. It was a message that I was gonna, let wiser people handle it. And a lot of people chimed in. But first, let me start off in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, who appeared to us in the person of Master W. Fard Muhammad, to whom praises are due forever. I further bear witness that Muhammad is his messenger, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, to be writing exact and down to the modern times. And the only way I would know anything about those two great brothers is through this beautiful man, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And in those three great names, I greet you in the words of peace. We say it in the Arabic language. Assalamu alaikum. Shout out, family, that's chiming in, NationTown TV. Like I said, this is going to be a real quick message. Just getting home from Peace Rides, another beautiful and successful peace ride that we do here in Los Angeles every month. And our beloved Western Regional Student Minister, Abdul Malik Saeed Muhammad, has been doing for quite some time. And it's all about coming together, different religions, even different ethnicities, coming together to help quell and inshallah stop the violence here in South Central. So we were out today participating and showing love through that. There's something that went down about a week ago. NationTown TV, let me just say it like this. NationTown TV, we don't ever vie or attempt to be the first to get out there and speak on any issue. We're taught by the most honorable Elijah Muhammad to think several times before we speak. Some say 5, some say 10 times. I say think 20 times if necessary, if you're not 100% sure on what you're going to say. But this past week, our brother Nick Cannon sat down after erasing and deleting almost all of the content that he had recorded on his show, Cannon's Class, and he replaced that content with a interview of a rabbi, a noted rabbi from the Simon Wiesenthal Center. Now, I have to apologize, speaking of apologies, to all of you who are chiming in right now because you got duped by the title. The title of this video, as you see up there, it says, Dear Nick Cannon. Because I'm not really going to talk at all about my brother, Nick Cannon. I'm going to say it again, my brother, Nick Cannon. So if you thought this was intellectual world star and I was gonna sit here and bang on my brother. No, my brother's done a lot of great things for our people. You know, I met him, good brother, got a lot on his mind and a lot on his heart. I'm not here to say anything negative or really anything at all in these few minutes about Nick Cannon. I'll let y'all handle that. But I will talk to that rabbi that Nick decided to put on his platform. I'm not going to say a whole lot. I thought about doing a whole video where I was going to, word for word, I was going to chop him down, chop this rabbi down and all the falsehood that he threw in our brother's face. I said, no, it's not even worth that. But it's just one point that I want him to know. I want all of you to know. And I want you all to kind of really let sink in before this story gets replaced by next week's story. Next week, Kanye gonna say something else crazy. Next week, another celebrity couple is gonna have some kind of issue going on. The story about Megan Thee Stallion and her getting shot, her shot pinky toe from Harlem Nights is gonna get back to is a growing news story. So before this all gets buried in our mind because of the ADD that we developed, our attention deficit, I just want to touch on a couple of very quick things about this interview. But I'm going to start out by being fair because some of you may have not seen it at all. But I'm going to show you an excerpt of it before we go any further. And we're going to watch it together. Not the whole thing. We don't have that much time. I don't have that much time. It ain't worth watching the whole thing anyway, to be honest. But this particular excerpt, I want you to watch and pay attention, and we'll watch it together.
My first question for you is, how did we get here?
We got here because the Simon Wiesenthal Center, one of its main focuses, not exclusive, but main, is dealing with anti-Semitism, which unfortunately, even before the pandemic and everything else that's happened since, we were having major violent attacks against New York Jews on the streets of New York and New Jersey, in the last couple of months. So we took the name, or we got the name of a living legend when he was still alive. His name is Simon Wiesenthal, the great Nazi hunter, man who resurrected justice.
That you actually knew personally.
I had the honor to know for almost 3 decades. And, someone who came from a group, the survivors of the Nazi Holocaust, 6 million Jews. He lost 89 members of his family.
Wow.
He was too weak to stand when the American troops in Mauthausen came. He weighed 90 pounds.
Wow.
If I don't like talking about victimhood and victimization, but if there was ever a group of people who had the moral right to say the world is horrible, they knew what was going on, they did nothing, it was the people who stumbled out of those camps. And amazingly, people like Wiesenthal and the others, that generation, bestowed a special gift to all humanity because they re-embraced life.
Right.
But when you take the name of a living legend, and I remember when Rabbi Marvin Heyer, who's the founder and dean and CEO of our place, he went to Vienna.
That's where he set up shop, right in.
Right, he went right into
the
heart of the Nazi land.
Wow.
I went to see Mr. Wiesenthal and said, King Solomon, as you know, famous statement says that a good name is more precious than oil.
Mm. Right.
And so I'm here to.
Okay. First things first, family. And this is why this won't be a long video. This is going to be the equivalent of a Mike Tyson fight in the early 90s. Straight and to the point. First of all, this rabbi, who was supposed to be a scholar of scripture, he's wrong about a great name being more precious than oil. I guess he was thinking about a meeting that he had with some of his Israeli brothers a couple of weeks ago about Palestine and taking somebody's oil, but it's actually not oil that's mentioned in the scripture. Let me just go ahead and bring it up. It says a good name in the book of Proverbs 22:1. A good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, and loving favor rather than silver and gold. Gold. Gold is the actual word. I'm sorry, I gotta come at you like Alex Trebek on Jeopardy. Ooh, sorry. The actual word is gold. But I like that he brought up the mention of taking a name. And a name is more precious than oil or gold. And since we on the topic of names, Mr. Rabbi, let's deal with the name of Semite. Now, many of you have seen people posting the actual definition of the name Semite. And we all know that if you do just 5 seconds of internet Google scholarship, you'll find out that of all the people on this earth, the one group of people that is absolutely not a Semite in any way, shape, or form are those who crawled out of the caves and hillsides of Europe. Furthermore, the deeper etymology of this word Semite comes from the actual name Shem, who was one of the sons of Noah from the Bible, from the Pentateuch, the part of the Bible that every Jew is supposed to study very closely. And this is also the same part of the Bible where they took the erroneous teaching and put it in their Talmud that we were the people of Ham, but Shem was another brother of Noah. And before and I'm not even going to get deep into the story of Noah because it's a very poetic story. It's not really about a bunch of animals on a boat. For those who say, oh, it never happened, you're right, it never happened. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us that 3/4 of the Bible is actually prophecy and not history. But I do know this much as far as history is concerned. The story of Noah happened no more than or no less than about 7,000 years ago, if it happened at all. And Mr. Rabbi, your people did not exist 7,000 years ago. So from a historical standpoint, you can put the definition of Semite aside. Because sure, a white person, a European, can go somewhere where the Arabic language is spoken and start speaking Arabic, or start speaking Aramaic, or start speaking Hebrew. They've done that all over the world. You'll find them speaking Portuguese in South America. You'll find them speaking Spanish in Cuba. You have them and find them speaking English in LA and New York. So it's not so much about a language. The etymology comes from Shem, a son of Noah. And Noah was on this earth. That was one of the earliest stories of the Bible. I mean, earliest in creation. And you and your people, Mr. Rabbi, were nowhere on this earth. Moving along. He also said that he felt the need to sit down with Nick Cannon because prior to this COVID-19 situation, there was a lot of instances of anti-Semitism in New York. I agree with you on that, Mr. Rabbi, 100%. There were a lot of instances over the years in New York dealing with anti-Semitism where actual Semites were being absolutely mistreated. There are too many to count, too many to go into in detail. But let's start with one Semite who was mistreated and murdered in the city of New York by the New York Police Department, Mr. Eric Garner, a wonderful father, friend, brother to many. Strong man. It took 3 or 4 of them to take him down. He's the original I Can't Breathe victim, since we want to talk about victimhood. Or maybe that's not the Semite you were talking about, Mr. Rabbi. Maybe it was Amadou Diallo, shot 41 times because he reached for his wallet when he was asked to produce his identification. I don't know, 99% of the people I know they keep their identification in their wallet. This brother was shot at 41 times. 19 of those bullets pierced his body because he was following the instructions of the police. Oh, maybe that's not what you were talking about. Maybe that's not what you were talking about, Mr. Rabbi. Maybe you were talking about a whole community of Semites in New York that were being mistreated. Okay, let's roll with that one. Maybe you were talking about Seneca Village, which existed once upon a time where Central Park exists, long before the Central Park Five, long before that white girl was caught on television choking out her own dog and calling the police on a brother who was bird watching. That same Central Park, that was like a black Wall Street in New York City. Before New York City's Wall Street had even gained its reputation, Seneca Village was a village of freed slaves and those who were never slaves, who came together and built a wonderful village on land that right now, if you were to build a 1-bedroom, 400 square foot apartment, it would probably cost you $5 million. And we had a village sitting right there where now it's just a park. And it's a little small plaque about as big as the gap between my two fingers that commemorates it. Maybe that represents the Semites that you were speaking of, Mr. Rabbi, or maybe not. But another thing that bothered me about this interview, and I can't say, I'm proud to say that I can't say that they're getting over on our people with this interview. Maybe some of you, but there are a few wonderful memes and videos on social media right now of young Aboriginal people that are not members of the Nation of Islam who realized that something was just wrong with that picture. Something was wrong with that interview. Namely, the sister, I was going to play her video, but check for it. A young sister who, in her own special way, really just picked the whole video apart. But one thing that he pointed out is an old, almost 40-year-old excuse about the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. First of all, why did he even mention the minister? Well, we know why he mentioned the minister. He mentioned the minister because he knows the source of our brother Nick Cannon's awakening. He knows the source. So that's why he mentioned him. And he mentioned him several times. But in mentioning him, he brought up that old 40-year-old felonious, erroneous claim that the minister complimented Adolf Hitler, complimented him in saying that he was great. Now, this is not coming from some snaggletooth, uneducated white man. I'm speaking of this rabbi. A rabbi is an absolute scholar. A rabbi is the man that any Jew, so-called Jew, in any Jewish community goes to, not just for spiritual guidance. No, not just for spirit. They even go to rabbis in terms of business dealings. When you go to a restaurant and they are certified as kosher, or when you walk through a store, a grocery store, and a certain product is certified as kosher, it was certified by a Jewish rabbi. So this is a man that's supposed to be learned or learned. He's supposed to be intelligent. He's supposed to be well studied. And if he is well studied, which I'm sure he is, we all play stupid, especially when it's convenient for our agenda. If he is all of those things, then he would know that the word great, that the word great does not necessarily mean good. The word great actually has a connotation that's more deeply rooted in the term or in the understanding of magnitude or size. It's an adjective meaning of an extent, amount, or intensity, considerably above the normal or average, very large and imposing. Mr. Rabbi, also, Mr. Rabbi, you spoke of Simon Wiesenthal, who was a very old man. And Rabbi, I don't know how old you are, but I know you're old enough and smart enough to remember the Great Depression. Billions lost as stocks crashed. Look at that sign over there to the left. That was actually in front of a business in a white community where they said, jobless men, keep going. We can't take care of our own. Don't even come to us looking for food or a job. We need food and we need jobs too. This was outside of a business. You see a white man over there to the right saying, who will help me get a job? I do not want charity. This was a time in America where everyone was suddenly dirt poor. Almost everyone. There's a particular group that was still doing quite well. And I'm sure that our rabbi friend knows about that group. And he's probably literally, physically, biologically related to that group. But I'm not even going to go there. But this was a time where even the whitest and wealthiest people were struggling. But they called it the Great Depression. And then he really got under my skin when he said if there was ever a people, he said he didn't want to get into victimhood though, but if there was ever a people who had a right to talk about being disadvantaged or oppressed, I forgot the exact words that he used, he said it would be the people that came out of those camps, meaning concentration camps. Meaning concentration camps. Well, let's take a look at a few things real quick. If there was ever a people, we don't even have to talk about slavery. If there was ever a people, we can just omit slavery. Let's put slavery behind us. Let's talk about after slavery. If there was ever a people, and let me give you a few names. Leger Daniels, Reuben Stacy, James Clark. So you got to put names on these victims, just like they did with Anne Frank. We tired of seeing slave movies. We tired of seeing bad stuff happen to black people in Hollywood on the movies and stuff. We should never get tired of seeing the truth. Ever, ever, ever. And we should study these photographs. Look at the other people and not just the brother that's hanging or the sister that's hanging. Pay attention to all the others in these photographs. If there were ever a people, ever a people, I'm gonna give you a minute on that. I'm gonna give you a moment to just study, Mr. Rabbi. Just a moment to take a look at a people. Since you said that if there was ever a people, if, and he put the if on it, as if it's highly unlikely that anybody else can fit that category. But just in case there is, it would have to be those who made it out of the concentration camps. As I mentioned before on NationTown TV, because I'm going to come back to that great word, and that's where I'm going to finish off. But before I get there, I told you, without even talking about slavery, you have to not only consider, but emphasize the sojourn of the Aboriginal black man in America. It's just no way around it. But you see, I don't want you to just watch this and think this is just something coming from the mind of a Muslim, a brother with a bow tie. See, that would be insufficient for many of you, as black as you are. I know if you're white, that would be insufficient, but for a lot of black people, just these Muslim niggas talking mess. But see, the real issue they have with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has nothing to do with a quote here or there, with a word here or there. It has to do with this set of scholarship right here. And as I mentioned before, this scholarship does not come from the mind of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Master Fard Muhammad. It actually comes from Jewish scholars, those who apparently knew better than Mr. Rabbi Cooper. Let's look at a few of those things real quick before we get out of here. This is Dr. Abraham Peck of the American Jewish Archives, and it's pretty obvious that he's a Jew. The first 2 centuries of the Black Jewish encounter in America, these are his words, were highlighted by a fairly extensive record of Jewish slave holding. Indeed, during the colonial period, in the small Jewish community of the time, almost every household of any form, North or South, possessed at least one slave. Dr. Abraham Peck. Brother Nick Cannon, I named this video Dear Nick. I will say this much to you, Brother Nick. I love you, brother. Let's get Dr. Abraham Peck or someone who's a descendant of him. I don't know if he's still alive. Let's go find him and put him on Cannon's class and ask him specifically about that. But that's just the only, Jewish scholar. There are no other ones, right? Maybe not. This is from a rabbi, a real rabbi, and historian, Dr. Bertram W. Kern. He says it would seem to be realistic to conclude that any Jew who could afford to own slaves and had need for their services would do so. Jews participated in every aspect and process of the exploitation of the defenseless blacks. From a rabbi. Judging by the picture, which is in black and white and appears to be old, maybe that Rabbi Kern, is not around, but maybe we can get somebody on TV or NationTown TV or Cannon's class who can bear witness to what Rabbi Kern said. He's a very prominent rabbi. Somebody knows what he said. And that's the proof. Not only that, let's look at another Jewish scholar. This is the dean. They call this man the dean of Jewish scholars. You can stop right there. I don't even have to say his name. The dean of Jewish scholars, Jacob Marcus. He says in 1820, over 75% of all Jewish families in Charleston, Richmond, and Savannah owned slaves. Employed as domestic servants, almost 40% of all Jewish households in the United States owned one slave or more. There were no protests against slavery as such by Jews in the South, but very few Jews anywhere in the United States protested against chattel slavery on moral grounds. If there was ever a people, the rabbi said, and if that's true, let me just suspend my own logic for a minute. Let me shut down my own brain for a minute and let me just entertain the idea that if there was ever a people who deserved to talk about victimhood, let's just pretend, let's play make-believe for a minute that the Aboriginal black man in America does not fit that bill. Why would the people who claim to fit that bill, the Jewish people, participate in the absolute atrocity that lasted several centuries, not several years, centuries. It didn't just kill 6 million black people. 100 million or more died just in the Middle Passage. I'm sorry, I used the improper word. I said died. Murdered. Even the ones that committed suicide by jumping off the sides of ships, that was murder. Murder by coercion. So, Mr. Rabbi, I got one more for you, bro. Scholar admits blacks are scapegoats for Jews. Now check this out. This Jewish scholar, believe it says Brandon Irvin Hound, says for decades, American blacks had served as a kind of buffer for American Jews so long as native hatreds were taken out primarily on blacks, they were less likely to be taken out on Jews. You know what I thought of when I first read this? For decades, American blacks had served as a kind of buffer for American Jews. So as long as native hatreds were taken out on us, the black man and black woman, they were less likely to be taken out on Jews. You know what this reminded me of? It reminded me of one of my favorite movies. A movie called New Jack City. There's a scene. I remember when I first saw it as a child, it blew me away. There's a scene on New Jack City where Nino Brown, played by our brother Wesley Snipes, he went to a wedding, and at the wedding, they had concocted an assassination attempt to murder him at this wedding. And when the bullets started flying, he picked up a young black girl and used her as a makeshift bulletproof shield, a bulletproof vest to protect himself from the gunfire. And that is what this Jewish scholar right here is telling you. He's telling you that for decades, the American Jewish people have been using you like Wesley Snipes used his little sister. Well, I won't say Wesley Snipes, but Nino Brown in this fictional telling of a story. But in reality, the Nino is the Jewish people, particularly the so-called Jews. Remember, there are good Jews. Absolutely. In fact, the Aboriginal black man is the original Jew, but there are even European Jews who swear by the Torah, who swear by the Pentateuch, and they even support and respect the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, but see, they don't have that much power. They don't have that much sway. They don't care about controlling the media. They don't care about controlling the banks. They just care about the Torah and the Pentateuch. All they care about is Moses and Almighty God. They ain't tripping on nothing else. They not trying to control nobody, use nobody, create any negative interpretation of anybody. Speaking of interpretations, we're taught in our lessons, the supreme wisdom lessons, that a trader made an interpretation that we would receive gold. Remember what the rabbi said about a name that's more precious? He erroneously said more precious than oil. But in our lessons, we're told about that trader that made an interpretation. That's what this rabbi is doing on this entire interview. He's making an interpretation. And I'm just asking you that you look deeper before you get fooled by that interpretation. But let me go back to that great thing, that great word. He said that the minister said Hitler was great and he meant it as Hitler being good. Absolutely false. If that is false, then you have to ask the question, why was the Depression called the Great Depression? But then you got to go in your Bible, Rabbi. I know that you're supposed to focus on the Pentateuch, the books of Moses in the Bible, but you should also have knowledge of the entire Old Testament, namely the last book of the Old Testament, the book of Malachi, where it says, And I quote, this is the last book of the Old Testament, chapter 4, verse 5. Behold, I will send you, who? Elijah, the prophet, before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And that got me to thinking. First of all, if great is a word that always means good, why would your Bible, come on, talk to me, Christians, talk to me, Jewish scholars that are supposed to be scholars of the Old Testament. In fact, Jewish scholars should also know the New Testament so that if they are to debunk it or go against it in any type of scholarly way, they have to know what they're going against. So they know the New Testament as well, but they have to be well studied on the Old Testament. Behold, I will send you Elijah, the prophet, before the coming of the great and dreadful. That's not an oxymoron, because it's talking about magnitude. Right now, with COVID-19 and everything we're going through, it is a great and dreadful day. And it ain't the day of Donald Trump. It ain't the day of Vladimir Putin. It ain't the day of the Jewish people. It ain't the day of entrapment. It ain't the day of nothing else. Or should I say, what was the word that Sister Jada used? Entanglement. This is the great and dreadful day of the Lord. Book of Malachi. And that is why, that verse right there is why when the Jewish people celebrate one of their greatest holidays and they have a dinner tradition that's similar to Thanksgiving, that's called Seder. Seder. When they gather as a family and sit down and eat their gefilte fish and all that good kosher food that they eat, they save a seat for Elijah. In fact, there's a very popular Jewish children's book called A Place for Elijah. You see that seat over there on the left? That seat is saved for Elijah. Saved for Elijah. Let's talk about that before we get out of here. Let's talk about them saving seats for Elijah. What does this mean? It means Elijah's cup. They save a seat and a cup. In Judaism, the fifth ceremonial cup of wine poured during the family Seder dinner on Passover or Pesach, it is left untouched in honor of Elijah, who, according to tradition, will arrive one day as an unknown guest. Unknown. I'm going to say that again. Unknown guest to herald the advent of the Messiah. So, to my Jewish family, keep doing what you're doing. Keep exposing yourself. And to the so-called Jews, not the real striving European Jews, shout out to y'all. I pray that your example begins to wear off on your so-called Jewish counterparts of European descent. But to those so-called Jews, keep doing what you're doing and keep saving that seat for Elijah. Because eventually, if you keep saving the seat, dear family, somebody, an unknown guest just might walk up in your crib and sit down in Elijah's seat. Listen, family, I thank you for listening. I leave you as I greeted you in the words of peace. And do just like the Jewish people. Keep a seat open for Elijah. I greet you in the words of peace. Assalamu alaikum.
I was told to deliver this message.